Welcome to the Fix Your Sciatica podcast, where we meet with experts and clients and discuss how to manage your sciatica and low back pain without the use of medications or surgery. I'm your host, Dr. Ashley Mack, and I'm a physical therapist as well as the founder of ifixyoursciatica.com, a go-to resource for pain management. Running is a fantastic sport and activity, and actually something that we need to do in life if we're trying to run and catch a bus, or if we're even just trying to run away from a stranger. And so a lot of times doctors, physical therapists, and just clinicians themselves will actually say running is not a very good thing for you because it's high impact and there's a lot of repetitions and there's a lot of injuries associated with it. What I say to that is, just like anything else, if you're doing things incorrectly, you are going to have an increased likelihood of getting hurt and experiencing issues. But there really shouldn't be anything that stops you from doing the things that you love, especially with running. And so today's guest, I have a really good friend of mine who I've been able to take through his sciatic pain journey to get him back into running. So today's guest is Dave Westerman out in the Midwest. Dave, good to see you. How you doing today?
Hey, Ashley, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
The pleasure is all mine. I'm super glad that you're here because you have a fantastic story. We had the opportunity to meet and work together to get you back into running shape, and not even necessarily running shape, just back into running because you were already in pretty good shape to begin with. So if you can, for the listeners, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your journey.
Sure. So I'm a 51-year-old. I've been married to my wife, Julie, for 23 years. We've got two young adult boys, Charlie and Danny. I live in River Forest, which is a suburb west of Chicago. I was born and raised here. After college and a short stint working as an engineer, I came into the family business where I've been working professionally for 24 years. And that business is the Carbet Paint Company. I'm the president. And we're a manufacturer that services and supplies industrial paint lines. So small family business. That's what we do. So I can talk a little bit about. You brought up the journey, and it was a journey. And thanks so much, Ashley. I feel like it's very much our story. It's the way I'll always think about it. But I have to go way back, predating you, and some of this you might recall from like our early sessions when I was trying to convey, my situation to you. So 15 years ago, plus or minus, like before I could even remember, I was out shoveling snow. We still have snow here in Chicago today, and I did back then. And I got my kind of hands extended out in front of me, and I went to lift, and I really did something to my back where I was like seeing stars. And I went inside, lay down in the living room. My wife was kind of staring at me, and I'm just like, I really did something bad. But, was feeling pretty young back then. I was still in my 30s. I didn't go to the doctor. We didn't do anything. We just kind of hoped it got better. And with time, it did. But I would say that's probably the point that if I ever injured it, that's what I remember, because I don't remember ever seeing stars before. And, from then on, so say that was like mid 30s, when I would go running, there was problems with the back, maybe the next day, bending from time to time, gardening, lawn, working in the yard, long drives, sitting for any kind of period of time would kind of act up. And, squatting, if I was like catching young little leaguers when I would coach my kids, there was a lot of back issues, and I would just always tough it out and kind of work through it. Back then, it felt like I could throw my back out. So it felt like if my spine was somehow impacted by a sudden movement, like a twist or something, I would feel a sharp pain on my spine, and that would flare up, and I would be almost kind of crippled, walking kind of sideways or leaning like I was the V8 guy. I used to joke with my wife. And, that would go on for a week or two before I would be able to walk upright again. So, at one point it got to be where I had injured it. My wife was like, enough's enough. You need to go see somebody for this. So I went, into the city, and I had an MRI done, and they diagnosed me with a herniated disc, L4, L5, kind of a minor herniation. The person at the time in the doctor's office told me, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like, we're surprised you're able to even, get up. and one being like, we can barely see this. They said, you're about a 3. You're not having surgery anytime soon, but you've definitely got a herniation there. So they sent me to physical therapy, and I learned some exercises in about 8 sessions, kind of 8 1-hour sessions where I would go in and kind of do a bunch of reps of this and that. And I had a little kind of book of exercises. Those actually did help a good amount. And I would say I did probably 10 years, 8 to 10 years of dealing with it again, meaning that I was not pain-free. I didn't necessarily feel great. Running was something that I love to do. I love to do it for stress relief. And, post-run, the next day was always sort of, painful. There was always some stuff. So
what a journey. I mean, just through that. I think it's so interesting. Like I know for even myself, if I ever bang up a portion, like a part of my body, I'm just like everyone else, where I think, yeah, it's going to heal in a couple of days, maybe a week. And I'm so glad, I'm so thankful for your wife that told you, oh, you gotta do something about it, because it's really easy for us to ignore. And for the most part, when people experience a back tweak or experience some sort of pain, they're going to a good amount of people will end up resolving without any sort of issue. But the fact that it kept coming back was definitely a good thing. I also think major kudos to that radiologist person who interpreted and kind of gave you like, hey, based on what you're dealing with, is more like a 3 out of 10. Because I think oftentimes when it comes to looking at an MRI or an X-ray, it's kind of scary. You're like, I'm in this much pain. At least if I get an MRI and X-ray, I'll get some sort of answer. And I just know in my head, like if I was experiencing the amount of pain that you were in, and they said, well, the MRI just says you're probably like a 3 out of 10. It's like not too bad. I know for me, I'd be like, am I crazy for like experiencing this much pain with that little of an issue? So that was just a few comments. I appreciate you sharing that with me, because it's probably very common to what a lot of people. So here you are, running, and it hasn't been feeling great, but this is an activity that you really enjoyed. I've been to Chicago both in the middle of winter, which is very, very chilly, but then also during the summertime, which is gorgeous. And it is in fact perfect running weather. So tell us a little bit more about like, movement on from the last point.
yeah, so kind of if we then fast forward to kind of where we were the last 2 years or so, I was kind of in this vicious cycle where I would go running, and I'm not running big mileage, I'm now 51. So 3 miles was kind of like my average, and 5 miles was kind of my long run. And I really got the most stress relief out of the long run. That's the one that made me feel the best. So it was worth like, trying to save up, to do that like only once a week, to kind of make myself feel better. And the pattern was I go for the long run, and after the long run, the next day, my back would tighten up. My sciatica started kicking in more and more. I have more sciatica type pain. So more pain down my glute, kind of down my leg. Not enough where I'm taking ibuprofen, but different pain than from that spinal, thing that, right? I told you that spinal injury. Sorry. And so there's sort of that. So the pain tightens up. My wife would scold me, you look funny. You're walking like an old man. I'm getting in and out of the car slow, and you need to stop running, or stretch your hamstrings better, or whatever else you should do. And this just went on. It's just like I can't give up running. It's the thing I love to do the most, and I need to just work through it. And if I just am stiff for one day, that's just where we are. So that brings me to September 8th of 2022. And so it's right after Labor Day-ish, and beautiful running weather here in Chicago. It's just early fall, and I went for a run. And normally this time, like the past 2 years, when I go for my runs, I have sciatica that kind of starts right when I start, doing my early jog kind of warm up, but it goes away in like the first, say, maybe like 5 minutes or less. And for that period, from 5 minutes to say 30 minutes, I would be pain-free. I wasn't pain-free at night in my bed. I wasn't pain-free sitting in my office or standing in my office. But for that kind of 30 minutes, for whatever reason, during the run, which probably helped maybe aggravate the sciatica at the time, I was pain-free. So it just felt so good to be pain-free and then running and getting the heart rate up. And on September 8th, what actually happened that was different that day is the 5 minutes kind of came and the sciatica stayed, and 10 minutes came and the sciatica stayed. And I went almost a full half hour, just sciatica every step, just pounding, every step I took on the right side was like every other step, I should say, was just a pain. And after that, I said, I'm in trouble. This sciatica's got me. And at that point, I really kind of decided, maybe I'm on the slippery slope of age and I just got to shut this down. I don't know what to do here. So I shut down the running and I just said, I'm going to give it a good week. And I did give it a week and nothing really got better. I gave it a couple weeks and nothing got better. I tried biking and walking and doing these lighter things. I still had sciatica, but running, I was still just too afraid of. So, when we talk about the journey and where I was, that's where I was physically. Mentally, I've now stopped using one of my primary stress relief methods that I've used since I was in college. So for 30 years or so, I'd been running for stress relief, and now I'm not. And guess what? Work is not any less stressful. In fact, September was like a really, really tough month for me at Carpet Paint here. And, we just had a lot of things going on and we had stuff at home too, and, whatever. So it was really, really tough. So mentally, I'm in a tough spot. So one night I'm walking the dog and I'm just thinking about, I need to get back to running. I need to burn some stress off. And I'm thinking somebody out there has to know something about sciatica. And I normally listen to podcasts while I walk the dog. And sure enough, this podcast pops up. I fix sciatica. And I said, well, that sounds good. Let me listen to this one for a little bit. And I listened to about 12 episodes over a month. I signed up for your sciatica protocol. I really digested what you had said. I started hearing repeated themes like there's not a one size fits all, to sciatica. I also couldn't believe, but I also heard that, even with an MRI and a herniated disc, it's not a death sentence. So those things really got me kind of curious. So as far as, what kind of put me to call you, it was after doing the sciatica protocol for probably a week or two, getting the text. You send text with like instructions and links to videos, and I was doing those exercises and I could notice things were changing. Like I felt different sensations. And so I said, well, there's something going on that's different, than where I've been the past kind of 5 years, but I really don't know what's causing it, but I know this guy does. So that's where I reached out to you to ask for a strategy session. So that's kind of how we got to there.
We are going to take a quick break to tell you about our awesome new program called the Sciatica Protocol. If you don't have the time to see a professional, but are tired of trying to figure out this recovery on your own, then the Sciatica Protocol is for you. Harness the power of a knowledgeable physical therapist through your phone. It takes no more than 7 minutes per day, and it is designed to help you recover as quickly as possible. It is simple to start, and all you need to do is log into ifixyoursciatica.com/the-sciatica-protocol and fill out the 9-question quiz to begin. The link for the program is in today's show notes.
That's quite the journey, Dave. I mean, going through all this pain, and I mean, you went through a period of kind of self-exploration, be able to say like, what type of information is out there? And that's actually one of the reasons why I have this podcast, because I want to be able to provide a platform and some sort of useful information for people to take action. And so, one, I think the big thing is like, if the least that this podcast can do is give people hope that they can get back into living their life and doing the activities they love, then mission accomplished. If it can actually fix people like immediately just from the audio itself, even better. But then, in cases where I really am needed, I'm there for you, which then brings us to like when we got together and it's like, okay, we are going to do some work together. What tell us a little bit more about like what your expectations were going into even to your first session. You know, we're meeting via Zoom. I'm out here in California. You're in Chicago. All I said was I need a camera and a space the size of a yoga mat, right? And I kind of left it at that and was like, okay, we're
Right.
gonna do some stuff together. So what was going through your head? What were you expecting?
Yeah, well, first, I really was happy that I could get across to you. And I felt comfortable asking this because you being a college athlete, I had heard on one of the podcasts that you would understand somebody, even if it's an old man kind of described as a heavy runner by some categories, that you would understand what it meant to me if I said, this is like I run, like I might not look like a runner, but that's what I do for stress relief. You would understand that. So I communicated in the first session that that was really the goal for me, is just getting back to running. And I remember I was thinking about this when I was thinking about preparing that. I remember the way I asked you that was more like is it possible for an older guy like me to get back to this? Like a guy that has a herniated disc, that has diagnosed, with an MRI herniated disc. And I felt like, I was really taken aback by your response. I almost felt like you were sort of, I don't know if it was, I don't know how to take it. Like I almost felt for a moment like you had taken it so lightly because you were just like, yeah, we're going to get you back to running quickly. And I remember thinking, I don't know who this guy is, but he doesn't know I've been dealing with this for like 15 years on and off. And I don't know how this is going to go away. So anyway, long story short, we had the strategy session and then we did 5 paid sessions. And I'm jumping ahead and then I'll jump back to your question. But, we had 5 paid sessions. I look back in my notes. Our original strategy session was October 10th. By November 6th, I was running again. And then I ran approximately 1 to 2 times per week. And my first pain-free run was the morning of December 8th. And that happened to be, I was trying to get that run in because I owed you a run because you had me on a schedule. And that was our 5th session. And at that 5th session, you basically fired yourself, saying you don't really need me anymore. I'm here if you need me, but we don't need to schedule another session. So, and the thing about that December 8th run, when I say it was pain-free, it was pain-free during the run, and it was also pain-free after the run and the next day, which I had never been pain-free in at least the past 2 years and maybe longer, longer than I can remember. So that's sort of the recap, but going on to what I was expecting. I was expecting to get some exercises and stretches, sort of what had happened. I expected you to listen to my situation, and you did. And though I had never attended any kind of telehealth thing, I wasn't sure what it was going to be like, but it was like a doctor appointment or a physical therapy appointment in most ways. With the big difference meaning, once in a while I had to just adjust my laptop camera because you wanted to see certain things. When you were giving me exercises or stretches, you were watching for certain things, and that ended up being, important. So, what surprised me about that along those lines is like when I was doing an exercise and you would say, it seems like that you're feeling something there. You know what I mean? And you were reading my face over the Zoom and you noticed a little grimace here and there. And that's where I said to myself, man, I'm being monitored more closely maybe than I would be at a physical therapy appointment. Because quick aside, when I did physical therapy, they were good and they were helpful, like I said, but I was one of probably 3 patients that the therapist was working with at one time. So it was sort of like, here's your new exercise. Here's 3 sets of 10, do this and come see me when you're done. So there was almost like no observation while I was going through those exercises. And here you are over Zoom. I'm in Chicago, you're in California, but you're watching my face to see whether or not this stretch hurts or not. And I learned, through this, the next thing that surprised me is I learned, and I'd heard a little of this on your podcast, but I really didn't believe it, to be honest with you, is that sciatica is not a no pain, no gain situation. It's probably closer to if pain no gain. So that's sort of what I took away with that. I write that. You can have that from me,
I love
Ashley, if
that.
you want. That's yours.
If pain, no gain. I like that.
Yeah, yeah. So the last thing I was really surprised at, I was really surprised at your versatility and breadth of training. So, not only were you open to my request to run, but that became part of the program from day one. So you tailored, your program for me targeted towards running. So you not only suggested things that would go along with running, but you helped me with my basic running form, which I had never been coached on ever, And so that was very, very helpful. And it no doubt helped with the pain. So there was this very, laser focused approach to get, me back to running, which I really, really appreciate.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, laser focus is key. I mean, when people are coming in and saying, I'm having a problem with X, Y, and Z, I think realistically speaking, it should be prudent on whoever's providing that service to solve that specific problem. And one of the things, Dave, if I may, I'll share with the listeners what my general thought process when you were telling me about all this. So then that way they can kind of get a better idea of what, what was going through my head, if that's cool.
Yeah, please.
Oh, cool. And so listeners, when Dave was telling me about his history, about the fact that it's been a number of years where he was dealing with this pain, but where it became truly problematic was when he was running. I could have taken the easy road out and said, Dave, yeah, you should never run. It's terrible for you. But the reality is that if you look at life, you're going to have to run to something. You're going to have to run after the bus. You're going to have to just hurry or hustle to get yourself moving. And so to be able to remove an entire activity out of someone's life, especially when it's something that they enjoy, that really killed me. So then with knowing that running is actually what makes the pain worse, one of the big things that we had to look at was actually how he ran, because it's really easy to do stretch. I could have given Dave exercises upon exercises, but if I didn't address his running form or how he ran or how much he ran, then there's a huge piece of the puzzle that would be missing. So that was going through my head. I said, okay, well, if we know that it's what he loves and it's also a problem area, let's take some time and address that specifically. And so, and Dave was really open to it, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and that went even into details. If you remember, Ashley, like what kind of shoes are you wearing? Are you wearing insoles? When's the last time you got new shoes? How many miles do you have on the current set and stuff like that? And, it was really down into the weeds with that stuff. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, we were ready. I think also in our first session, I think I asked a lot more questions, like a ton of questions. I think we probably only spent, I don't know, maybe 15 to 20 minutes on just like trying to implement exercises, but a lot of it was just like, let's get as much information as we can to figure out what this problem is as well.
Right. And I would say out of the 5 sessions, I do want to be fair and honest about it. The first session, I don't think we hit it nail on. It was sort of like there were still some exercises when you gave them to me and I told you the next week, I said, this one kind of hurts, when I'm doing it. And I'm still being in a no pain, no gain. I didn't really believe that. So I was just going through it. But immediately the next time when I reported that to you, you said, we're done with those. Okay. We're not, those aren't working for you if you're feeling stuff. So here's your new set. The second appointment was the time where I was after the second appointment and doing those exercises at home. That's where I knew we were on the right track. Yeah.
And I think you also had the opportunity to go enjoy a few days out in Ireland, if my memory serves me correctly.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And you helped me with preparing. I expressed to you, hey, I'm nervous about this, whatever it is, 7-hour plane ride, and I can't really sit that long normally. And you gave me some tips for how to get through the airplane ride and stretches for the seat and stuff. I didn't really, by that time, I was actually in pretty good shape with the stuff you had given me, and it was helpful, some of those things, but I didn't need it as much just because you had given me so many exercises. My back was already in better shape, or my sciatica was.
Yeah. And I love it, especially the fact that you said, you didn't need me anymore. And that's exactly what I need. That's exactly what should be the thing. Being able to put you in a position where you can be independent and take care of any sort of the issues that you have, giving you the tools, but also helping you understand what the right tools are. Listeners, like my podcast and many other resources out there on the internet, they're all really useful tools. But when you get a toolbox, you have to know when and how to use these tools to begin with. And when you have all this stuff, it can be overwhelming. And so meeting one-to-one could be a really great way to say, these are the most important tools that are needed for you. And you can put them in your back pocket should the time come. And so, yeah, Dave, I'm really so pumped about your success. So let's talk about the future, right? Now that you're feeling better, I know that the last time we spoke was back in December. We're in the middle of February now. Tell us a little bit more about what you're looking forward to now that you've broken free of this cycle. What's on the horizon for you?
Yeah, it's funny because we at our last session, you shared that saying, which I love, which is, I remember our last session. I was like, I'm thinking about maybe doing a distance run or something like that, or I might get into some other exercises. And you said a healthy man has 1,000 wishes and a sick man has only one wish. And you remembered when I just wanted to get back to running, but now we're talking about other stuff, which is great. For me to be able to run pain-free is just unbelievable, and it just opens up so much stuff. So, I mean, besides just normal exercising and looking for other forms of exercise, walking the dog, I mean, believe it or not, was painful at night. It's more enjoyable now. Traveling is something I enjoy to do, and sitting in the car or plane was not enjoyable. So we're doing more of that. Julie and I have some friends that actually like to do runs, so it's kind of like a destination, outing for us. We'll go do some runs. So I'm not as worried about whether or not I'm going to be, have to sit those races out. So that's kind of fun to think about. So it just opened up a ton.
Life is so open-ended. Doing all those activities, I'm loving that for you, and I'm really so excited. And so, last question, Dave. I mean, for the folks who are listening and they're like, yeah, this seems like it could help, but I'm still not quite sure. What any words of advice for those folks who are on the fence about taking action? It doesn't even necessarily have to be working with me, but taking action and so that they can feel better.
Yeah, well, I can just summarize my experience, so I've thought about advice and I've shared, here what I've tried to do, but, really what it comes down to this is like in September, in my mind, I was, not only was I done running, but I was starting to slide more quickly down this slippery slope of old age. So I had kind of become an old man, in my head, and sciatica had beaten me. And so I reached out to you, and in 2 months and 5 paid sessions, I was running pain-free. So that's no pain during the run and no pain the next day. And I'd not experienced that in probably somewhere between 2 years and maybe 10 years. I can't even remember the last time I was pain-free after running. So I'm still sliding down that slope, but maybe it's not as steep now, or maybe I actually climbed back up just a bit, So for me, I don't know what else to say, except I wish I would have called you sooner, Ashley. And I just cannot thank you enough. So thank you for having me on and sharing my story. I hope somebody else, I hope someone else reaches out for a strategy session, because that's where it started with me. So.
Right on, Dave. That was beautiful. And so thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to help you. And so I'm so excited for what's to come, and age is just a number. And I'm so excited for you to do all the activities. So it's good talking with you.
Thanks, Ashley. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you got some help from today's podcast. And for more info, check us out at ifixyoursciatica.com. Have a fantastic and pain-free day.
No patient-therapist relationship is formed by listening to this podcast. We are not providing medical advice, and all information should be confirmed by a medical provider.